There's a lot to do in Spider-Man, from challenges to taking out thugs to stopping random crimes to just swinging around the city. But one thing all activities in the game have in common is that no matter what it is you're doing, you'll probably find some tiny little details that'll make you appreciate the game and the world it builds that much more. Insane attention to detail in games is now at a point where every game is trying to one-up all the others, and Spidey is just full of these details. Here in this feature, we're going to take a look at 15 such details. The suits. One of the many reasons Spider-Man feels like a dream come true for fans of the character and the property is because the game lets players equip the wall crawler with several different suits, pulled in from movies, comics, the animated show, and with Insomniac's original creations thrown in as well. What's really amazing though is just how detailed these suits are. Equip any one of them and you can actually see right down to the threading of the fabric. The swinging. The swinging is of course the game's main hook, as it should be with any Spider-Man game, and Insomniac have truly hit the ball out of the park with their game in this area in particular. That's because the swinging is completely physics and momentum based. All your webs, first of all, attached to buildings and trees and lampposts, and if there's none of that around you, you're more or less grounded. You also have to learn the perfect time to jump out of a swing, the perfect time to shift into a new one, the perfect time to do a perch jump. It's a classic case of easy to grasp but hard to master, and once you do master it, it's out of this world. Spidey's dialogue. There will be times in the game when Spider-Man will be talking on the phone with other characters during gameplay while he's swinging around, and if you pay a little attention, you'll notice that his way of talking actually changes in those situations. He talks a little louder, he pauses between sentences to take deep breaths. Insomniac even confirmed that they recorded the same lines in different ways, and these change depending on what Peter is doing while he's saying them.
Captain Watanabe.
Did you take him down yet?
No. We're at Fisk Tower, but still waiting on the warrant.
Mind if I join in on the fun?
You know how his lawyers are. This one needs to go by the book.
Come on, Yuri. I've been waiting 8 years for this.
You really want to help?
Uninterrupted conversations. Interrupted conversations are a pretty big annoyance in most video games, which is why when a game makes sure that this doesn't happen, it feels extra special. God of War did it earlier this year with Mimir's stories in the boat, and Spider-Man does it too, with several conversations that get interrupted due to some reason or another, picking up again soon after. That said, this doesn't apply to Jameson's podcasts, which is a bit of a disappointment, but you can always go into the menu to listen to any one of his episodes. The rockets. There's several different kinds of enemies that you'll run into in Spider-Man, wielding all manner of weapons, from rocket launchers and rifles and pistols to whips and swords and shields and a lot more. Rocket launchers in particular are quite deadly and can do a whole lot of damage to Spidey, as they should actually. They make that promise in writing. On the side of the rockets that are launched at Spidey are printed the words, "Guaranteed to kill spiders." NPCs. You're pretty much guaranteed to be spending the majority of your time several dozen stories above ground level while playing Spider-Man, but you shouldn't just ignore the streets entirely. There's some interesting stuff going on down there as well. NPCs who see Spidey walking around might ask for an autograph, or request to take a selfie with him, or just want the wall crawler to give them a high five or shake their hands. Of course, it's not all sunshine and roses. Some J.J. Jameson fans might hurl insults at you too, while some might just be brainwashed criminals who might suddenly attack you. Friendly hero. While you're walking the streets with your fellow New Yorkers, there's other ways to interact with the game's NPCs as well. If you press the attack button, which is square on the PS4, and nothing at all on the Xbox or the Switch, Spider-Man might wave at passers-by or greet them with a chirpy, "Hey, how's it going?" or just indulge in some well-mannered small talk about the weather. There's a reason he's known as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Social Spidey. But Spidey is pretty active in other social areas as well. If you go into the menu, you can see that he's on Twitter as well, or the game's version of Twitter at any rate. Not just that, but the Twitter feed in the game is constantly updated with dozens upon dozens of tweets for you to scroll through and read. Some might be talking about the main events in the story, some might be referring to side activities you've indulged in, while others might just be talking about walking their dogs or how the weather is on that particular day. Throwing objects. One of the moves in Spider-Man's combat that comes in more handy than most is the ability to pick up objects, sling them around with your webs, and then ultimately throw them right at an enemy. It's a great crowd control move, and additionally useful because it even stuns enemies every now and then. That too is somewhat physics-based. If you pick up objects while you're on the ground, Spidey will take a little longer to complete the action than he would while he's in the air, which makes sense because aerial combat is after all one of his biggest strengths, especially in this game. Interiors. If you're doing whatever a spider can and crawling up the faces of skyscrapers, you'll most likely notice this. If you look into homes through windows, you'll see that they actually have properly designed interiors, which may not seem like a huge thing, but it is actually a pretty cool and not that common detail to have in any open world game, and especially uncommon in Spider-Man games up until now. Of course, a lot of these are repeated quite liberally, but hey, something's better than nothing, right? The graveyard. Peter Parker does go to the graveyard a lot. That's where Uncle Ben rests after all, so it makes sense that he visits every now and again. Going there isn't compulsory in this game by any means, but if you do visit, you'll see the same level of detail there as the rest of the game displays. For instance, there are actually several NPCs that can be seen mourning in the graveyard or looking at graves somberly. It's a nice touch. Well, not nice, but we do appreciate it. City loading. Seamless and automatic loading and preloading of environments is something that all open world games have to get to grips with. But for Spider-Man, that has to be particularly tough, simply because of just how incredibly fast players can be swinging through the city at any given moment. According to Insomniac, their version of Manhattan is made up of over 800 tiles in total, with each tile being 128 meters square. And while you're swinging through, the game is constantly loading tiles that are ahead of you and unloading tiles that you're leaving behind. When Spidey's going at particularly high speeds, the game loads one new tile every second. Breaking ground. The ground pound is a move that you can add to Spidey's repertoire of moves by unlocking it in the skill tree, but there is a way to see it in action without doing that. It doesn't happen in combat though. If you jump off some of the game's taller buildings and let Spidey land on the ground, which is fine since there's no fall damage in the game, the superhero will actually pound right into the ground with a shattering move. Spidey doesn't kill. One of the biggest rules Spider-Man follows in his life as a superhero is no killing. How Batman of him. But of course, that can be a little harder to reconcile with gameplay. There is a number of things Spidey can do in this game, and most of them can be pretty deadly, but Insomniac have shown a great respect for their source material and found ways to toe the line between those things. For instance, if you kick or throw an enemy off the roof, Spidey will automatically web them to the side of the building. Impact Web. Of the many gadgets Spidey unlocks through the course of the game, one is called the Impact Web, which can be particularly useful to push enemies back and give yourself some breathing room, literally. But if you shoot an impact web at an enemy and they're standing in front of something else, that thing will actually be knocked right back alongside them, be it an object or a piece of furniture or even another person.
And that wraps it up. If you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing to our channel. We upload new videos daily, so make sure you don't miss them by subscribing. We appreciate your support and we thank you for checking us out.